Hello everybody and welcome back. In this lesson we're going to be covering the if statement in C# and how it relates to Unity. So I'm back here in my project from last time. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new C# script in our scripts folder, and I'm going to label it if statement. And once you have that new script created, I'm going to go ahead and open that up in Visual Studios. So now that we have our scripting file opened up, let's look at how we can create some if conditions. Your if conditions run inside of the update or start or any other custom method that you may want to create. And so the structure of this is the word if, followed by a set of open and close parentheses, followed by a condition. This condition needs to be or return a true value in order for this to work properly. So I'll put a comment there for a minute. So your condition, after the condition is met, then we have our open and close brackets there. And so again, if this condition turns out to be true, then whatever we have inside here will execute. So we can call this our standard if statement. You have that run for one time. Later on, you might have things where you have an if-else statement where you're going to check for one condition, and if that condition returns false, then it will automatically run the else as its check. So we'll go ahead and put a comment here, say run code if condition is true, and then we can do an else that says run this code if the condition was false. And so this is your basic setup for your if and if else. You can run your if conditions, your if statements independently. You don't always need an else to run with it, but sometimes you might need that to be there. Different scenarios that might come up along the way, you'll check for that, and we'll come up with different scenarios later on. But your if and else, and this is the structure for a standard if and if else statement. What we can do is, as an example here, is what happens if I was to then create a condition here to be ran. So I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of variables. I'm going to create, let's go with a public integer of points, and I'm going to assign this to 100, and then I'll create a second public integer of our required points, and let's say that's 200. So I've got two different variables with two different values that I'm checking for. So here, what I can do here is, for my condition, is that I can check, has my points reached my required points? So instead of writing the word condition, I would write, say, the points variable, and once this is greater than or equal to our required points, that if this becomes true, points are greater than or equal to the required points, then let's say we're going to go ahead and level up the player. So maybe you would run a custom method here. So level up player, and this would run. And then else, if we're not leveling up the player, then we could essentially write a message. We could possibly run a debug.log to the console to let the player know, hey, you haven't reached the required, or print out a message to the player on the screen that says, hey, you're missing points. So as an example, we'll just do a debug .log. You still need points. Like so. And then we can create this custom method called level up player. So just outside of our update, I'm going to do a private void. So that way there's no errors in our code. And so here we have our standard if condition that if the player points reach or meet the required points, we're going to level up the player. We're going to then run a specific custom level up method. And if the player does not reach that required amount, then we're going to run a message to the console saying, hey, you need to still add your points. The other look is that what happens if we want to create more than one conditional check? Currently, this is set to one conditional check. You can do things that check more than one specific condition. So let's look at an example here. So I'm going to go just below my custom method here. And sometimes this happens with use your on collision enter. So I'm going to create an on collision enter. And inside here, usually we have where we're checking a specific collision on a specific tag. So if I say if, and then I'm going to check for the collision. This collision here is the local parameter of the object that this object ran into. So this condition, and let's say the game object, and then I'm going to compare the tag on this. And if that tag is enemy, and then we can say also and. So the and condition is the double and %. That's going to be Shift 7 on the keyboard. So we're checking for is in fact the object that I ran into, was it the enemy, and was that other enemy's, say, position in the world relevant, relative to my position. So if I was to say collision And so here, what I've done is that I've created a and condition. So I need to make sure that both of these are true in order for my code to run here. So this is saying, hey, did I run into the enemy, and was the enemy's transform position on the Y greater than my position on the Y? This would be something like the enemy is falling down on the player. We're checking for those two conditions, and if those two conditions are met, then we're going to go ahead and execute the code. The last one is an or condition. So one of these has to be true. So either the first condition or the second condition. And so if I was to then replicate this, I'm going to put a comment up here. And then let's say if we were to go ahead and replicate this, paste this down here, and I'm going to use an or condition. So instead of the double and %, you're going to use the double pipe symbol, the two straight up and down lines. This is the key on the keyboard that's 3 down from the P key. So if it's the enemy that you run into or the other object that you ran into, its position on the Y is greater than your position, then it's going to run. And so either one of these has to be true in order for that to be met. And so there you have some of the basic structures of your if statements. You have your if as a standalone. Then you have an if else if you want to check for 2 different conditions. And then if you want to run and create an and condition that checks for 2 different things that have to be true in order for a statement to run. The last one is a or condition using the pipe symbols to allow one of these 2 conditions to be true in order for you to run the code inside of that if statement. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.